Chapter 2, The Father's Plan. Life is made up of choices. In Mark chapter 10, Jesus is choosing a road. He comes to a fork in the road and he has to choose which way to go. Is he going to take the road to Galilee or to Jerusalem? Is he going to go back home to Nazareth? One road will take him home to family, to his job, to security, to maybe a future family, to all kinds of things that we all strive for, that we live for, to follow the human course. The other road will take him to Jerusalem, which will take him to betrayal, suffering, insult, and a death sentence. And he knows this ahead of time. Thank God that Jesus did not take the easy way out. He chose to go to Jerusalem. He knew what was waiting for him, but went anyway. Jesus knows at this point he is facing 4 weeks of life. He has 4 weeks left to live. What if you got a phone call this afternoon or tomorrow morning and the doctor tells you, "We found something on your CAT scan. It is inoperable. You have 4 weeks left to live." Would it change your life? Would it change your perspective? Would it change your focus? Would it change the things that you were worried about and concerned about? What would become important to you then? Would the scrape on your car or the cobwebs in your garage be much of an issue to you anymore? What would become the important things? As Jesus looks at the last 4 weeks of his life, his eye is on the cross. It is a pretty incredible story. He has 4 weeks left. He is going to hand the baton off to guys who do not seem to understand. Looking from the outside, an observer would shake his head and say, "No way." But it is important to recognize that God has a plan. This is not a story that unfolded at random. This plan was designed by the Father before the foundations of the world. It makes sense to us because we are looking at it from the other side of history. But to the disciples, his plan was unfathomable, even ridiculous. The unfathomable plan of God. I love that word, unfathomable. Something is so deep you cannot reach the bottom of it. And even when you've reached it and you grab a hold of it, you're not sure if you really have it. For the disciples, the plan does not make sense. Jesus keeps telling them what's going to happen and they say, "What?" They just do not get it. From our side, we take it as history and see how things line up. We look at the Old Testament and see the prophecies. It fits. The disciples do not have the history. They have the prophecies, but their preconceptions cloud their view. That the Messiah is going to die and suffer and be killed does not fit with their view of a triumphant king. That he is going to lose is unthinkable. The Messiah is of the line of David. He is the winner in life. He is the one who establishes a kingdom. He is the one who brings peace and prosperity to the land. He is the one who clears out all the enemies. He is like David, who defeated Goliath and the Philistines. He is the winner. He is like Gideon and Moses. He brings truth and established it. We follow him through the wilderness, and he's going to get his beard pulled out, get scorched, die? It did not make sense. The Messiah is supposed to make a difference, and he has not done that yet. In fact, he is just getting started. It has just been a few short years. He taught a lot of people, but there are still so many more to teach. There is still so much more sickness to heal. There are so many more disciples to make. There is so much more to do. There is no way he will die. It doesn't make sense. It is unfathomable. What good is a dead Messiah? A living Messiah can be rallied around, but a dead one? The Father's unfathomable plan can be traced back to Isaiah. In fact, it starts in Genesis, but it is pinpointed with great detail in Isaiah. Remember Jesus' first sermon in his hometown of Nazareth? After preaching throughout the area and performing miracles in Capernaum, he came to Nazareth, the village where he grew up, his boyhood home. He is selected from the congregation to read from the scrolls, so he chooses Isaiah 61, 1 through 2. After reading the passage, he rolled up the scroll, handed it to the attendant, and sat down. And with everyone's eyes on him, he declared himself to be the fulfillment of what was written, that he is the Messiah. They became enraged and attempted to throw him off a cliff, but he slipped away from them. Luke 4:14-30. But the most significant part of this passage is that Jesus knew who he was and what was in store for him: the rejection, beatings, scourging, and crucifixion. All were prophesied to happen to the Messiah. Isaiah 50:5-7 records the Messiah's, Jesus' response. The sovereign Lord has given me his words of wisdom, so that I know what to say to all these weary ones. Morning by morning he awakens me and opens my understanding to his will. The sovereign Lord has spoken to me, and I've listened. I do not rebel or turn away. I give my back to those who beat me, and my cheeks to those who pull out my beard. I do not hide from shame, for they mock me and spit in my face. Because the sovereign Lord helps me, I will not be dismayed. Therefore, I have set my face like a stone, determined to do his will, and I know that I will triumph. Isaiah declared what the servant is going to go through, and that whoever the Messiah was going to be, he understood who he was. He understood that he was the Messiah. Jesus understood who he was, and as Isaiah declares, he is willing to do the Father's will. And Jesus' life and ministry bore that out. It all comes down to Jesus choosing to say yes to the Father, choosing the hard but necessary way. His eye was on the cross from the beginning. It was what moved him to say no to Satan's offer of the easy way in Matthew 4, and no to Peter's military solution in John 18. And again he took the 12 and told them what was going to happen to him, Mark 10:32. He knew where all this was going to lead, and he did not want his disciples to think his death was a failure, Mark 10:33-34. When we get to Jerusalem, the Son of Man will be betrayed to the leading priests and the teachers of the religious law. They will sentence him to die and hand him over to the Romans. They will mock him, spit on him, beat him with their whips, and kill him. But after 3 days he will rise again. We read this passage in Mark and we ask, how can it be any more clear? And what happens next? Verses 35-37. Then James and John, the sons of Zebedee, came over and spoke to him. Teacher, they said, we want you to do us a favor. What is it? He asked. In your glorious kingdom, we want to sit in places of honor next to you, one at your right and the other at your left. Huh? Essentially, they were saying, let us change the subject. Let us look at something else. I do not like the conversation. Let us change the channel. We know this cannot happen because he is the Messiah. So something else has to be going on. I do not want to know about this. And so they turn a deaf ear to what is going on. His eye was on the cross, but the disciples' eyes were on kingdom glory. They were blinded to what was coming next. The disciples watched Jesus say yes to the Father, and Jesus told them, pick up your cross and follow me. They did not fully understand what that meant, but they would after the resurrection. They were to do what does not come naturally, to defy the natural instinct of preserving one's own life, but give self for the blessing and benefit of others. He tells them it is not all about you. It is about showing my love to the world. And that is why he tells James and John in Mark 10:39, you will drink the cup I drink and be baptized with the baptism I am baptized with. We find fulfillment ourselves as we give and sacrifice for others. The disciples were astonished. The disciples were terrified. The disciples were oblivious. And so my question to you is, do you follow in their footsteps? How often do God leadings happen around you and you just not see it? We are so wrapped up in our own plans and our own ideas and our own thoughts and what we care about and what is really important to us that we do not care what is important to God. We do not care about others. We are not focusing on Him or His ways. This last week, Jim Badinsky shared a story I want to share with you. He was having a bad day on Monday, one of those days where everything was going wrong. Everyone seemed to have a problem and would come to him and expect him to fix it, and he had no solutions. It was not a good day. He prayed in the morning, "Lord, I know I have a bad attitude. Fix me. Help me, Lord." But God did not just turn the light on. Bing. He goes through a long day, and finally it was 5:00 p.m. He was ready to leave and go home. He leaves the back of his shop and is circling his car, getting ready to leave, when a guy with a 1-gallon gas can and a check says, "I have this check and I have this gas can and I'm out of gas. My truck ran out of gas and I have my daughter's bike and rode it over here. She is sitting right over there, but I was just wondering if someone could help me with getting some gas." And Jim goes, "Oh, not again. You ever been there? I mean, you are at the end of your rope and then somebody wants some help." He takes him to Cumberland Farms and the guy gets the gas can out. He reaches into his pocket and pulls out a $1 bill. Jim says, "Oh, okay, Lord, I can spring for $3 and give him a whole gallon." Jim goes in and pays the money to get the can filled and comes back and asks the man about himself. And the guy says, "Well, I've been looking for a job. I got laid off. I have my mom and my daughter. We're just trying to get by." And then as he is coming back to Jim's shop, he sees the daughter's bicycle still sitting on the side of the building. And the whole time the guy had been distracted and waiting to make sure his daughter's bicycle was not stolen. Here is a beat-up little 24-inch pink bicycle, but it is all his daughter has, and he is so relieved to see it is still there when he got back. Then Jim reached in his pocket and gave him another $20 and said, "Hey man, go get some milk, get some food for your daughter, get some more gas, and go with God." And it changed Jim's day. Yes, the guy got his needs met, and we do not know what will happen to him or his daughter in the future, or how this incident will impact their lives, but it made a difference in Jim's life. It made a difference in his week. He was called to be a blessing to somebody, and God changed his heart and attitude in the process. Some of you have been making wrong choices, one after another for a long time. But realize you do not have to turn around and backtrack for 5 years, 20 years, or however long you've been walking away from God. He will take you and put you on the right road from where you are. In front of you today are 2 roads, the world's way and God's way. Who are you going to listen to? You get to choose today. You do not have to backtrack. He says, "Today I am ready for you." Will you start to choose my way? Will you listen to my voice? And watch what Jesus will do. Watch what God will do. The sovereign Lord will help. You have the God of creation who watched over Jesus and carried him through horrendous stuff, watching over you. You may not feel important. You are just 1 in a million, 1 in 100,000 in this area, but God knows you by name and is watching over you. He cares about each and every one of his children. But like the prodigal son, you must choose to stay and work alongside your heavenly Father.